Of all cryptid creatures, I think that skinwalkers scare me the most. Something about the way that they use your mother's voice or your dog's bark to lure you into the woods, to me, is like the creepiest thing ever. And what happens to the people who do get lured into the woods by those familiar sounds? I have no idea. But I do know I do not want to find out. Marie writes in, she and some co-workers had a bonfire out in the woods. And it wasn't huge. There was only 7 or 8 people there, and she knew most of them. And so for the first hour, it was super fun. They were about a mile away from civilization. And it was in rural Utah. So there are not many cars going around. There's not much traffic if you did need help. And out of the whole group, there really was only one person that she didn't know. But she didn't think anything of it. She just thought that they were a friend of one of her coworkers. He was a tall, skinny white dude with black hair and blue eyes. And she noticed that he was kind of distant. He didn't talk a whole lot to too many people. He was very reserved. But she didn't think too much of that because she figured if she's a friend of a coworker, that kind of behavior would be expected. But as time went on, she noticed that he would kind of randomly stare at people. And that's when he kind of started to feel a little off to her. But before she started asking anybody who he was, she started to just watch him a little closer. The way that he moved was really strange. The way that he walked was kind of strange. The way that he moved his body and his head was kind of weird. And this kind of made her paranoid. So she started asking her coworkers if they knew this guy. And one by one, she would ask them, and they would say, no, I thought he was with somebody else. And once she figured out that none of her coworkers were with this guy, she figures that is enough. She went around to each coworker then, told them what was happening, said, this guy's not with anybody. We need to get out of here. And all of her coworkers agreed. So they all agreed to pack up and go back to Marie's house instead. So they all packed up their stuff, pretending that they were calling it quits for the night, saying goodbye to each other, and packed everything up in the cars. And this guy didn't get into any car. He just stood near the woods and waved goodbye. And as she drove off, she's in the car with a colleague of hers who's also her friend. And they look back and the guy had disappeared, like in an instant. And if that wasn't creepy enough, Marie had just had one of the windows in her car broken out, so she could hear everything going on around her. And on their way out of the woods, every now and then, she could swear she heard screaming or somebody calling her name. And that just made her and her friend terrified. They just kept hearing these noises, like a horse neigh or a dog whine or somebody calling their name or screaming or wolves howling. And something just told Marie that whatever it is was making these noises to lure her into the woods. But luckily, nobody in her party of coworkers took the bait. As they're leaving the gravel road, getting ready to turn onto the main road, Marie's car is last. So she's got a really good view of everything happening behind her. And from her rear view mirror, she sees someone run across the road way faster than any human being should be able to run. And it was tall, skinny, and super pale. And it freaked her out so bad at that point that she just gunned it on the road and passed all of her coworkers. And her friend in the passenger seat asked her what was wrong, but she was just so terrified she couldn't speak. All she could do was pay attention to the road and drive. And at one point, she almost drove off the road into the woods. And she finally snapped out of it when another coworker called her and asked her what was going on. So she, of course, lied and said everything was fine. And he, of course, didn't believe her and kept goading her to tell him what was wrong. But she just kept saying, nope, everything is fine, until he gave up and finally said, fine, we'll meet you back at your house. And now Marie says she is terrified to go near any woods, or sometimes even just to leave her house. And she thinks that if her instincts had not kicked in and told her to leave and get everyone else out of there, someone at that bonfire would never have been heard from again.